Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar, Teach HSC Exam Literacy Smart Learning Suite Online. And today's presenter is there's my slide. Today's presenter is Eva Korkidis. So she's a digital pedagogical coach from Vision Next. She's got over 18 years experience in education. She was a secondary head teacher for computing, DEC in New South Wales, and kids coaching workshops. And she also did trainer and digital pedagogy at Vision Next. So I just want to confirm that everybody can hear me. If you just want to pop yes or no in the chat. Okay, so we'll just do some housekeeping. So if you'd like to ask a question, there is a little question mark with a speech bubble just on the control panel there. So if you want to put a question in there throughout the webinar, I will be here helping Eva so I can answer your questions. Also, at the end of this webinar, it will be uploaded onto YouTube in the next few days, and you can actually log on to earn a certificate. You just click on the Mark Complete button, which will log you into the training.smarttech.com, and that will give you a badge and earn your certificate. So I think that's about it for now from me. I will pass you over to Eva, and I'll be back at the end. Okay, thanks a lot.
Hello everyone, I'm Eva. Thank you for the introduction there, Kendall. The first thing that we need to do to get started, if you haven't done so already, if you can go to hellosmart.com, you're going to need to type in a code, and the code that we are going to need, or the class code, I'll just get it up for you, is 46151. So I'll just bring up the window. So you should be over at hellosmart.com. And once you're there, you should be prompted with a class, or asked to supply a class ID. Now I've already logged in, I'll just leave that class to show everybody. And you'll see Miss Techie 46151. I've already joined that class before, but for you, you'll be joining a new class and typing in the code 46151. So let's get started. Now today we're going to be looking at using the online learning suite, and as a high school teacher, I think that one of the areas, particularly when it's come to notebook in the past, is that it's been more suited. My own perspective is that it's been more suited for the primary years. What the online learning suite has done for me is that it's really opened up a whole new world when it comes to collaboration and real-time assessment, particularly those two areas. Engagement is fantastic. There's a lot of different activities that we could use in Notebook to engage kids, but I find that in the latter years of the older kids want to be able to use this tool, particularly for something like maximising HSC success and getting kids to understand exam literacy. And I believe that this is something that could apply in any sort of teaching and learning context. So at the very least, on the Smart Learning Online Suite website, you could also have this open on a new tab. If you haven't done so already, suite.smarttech.com gives you access to the online learning suite, and as a teacher we can go there and create new resources where we can have the students engage with our resources. These can come down to very static, like PDF type files or PowerPoint files. Now, normally I would have a Word document, and I'll just show you what that looks like. It'll be an examination success booklet where I would hand it out to the kids, and I would work through the workbook together with the students. I might give it to them for homework, but the amount of marking and feedback would be fairly minimal, particularly when it would come to me marking these booklets. It's not an assessment task, and as we know, we always have lots of marking to do. So I suppose the biggest thing that I find that the Learning Suite has done is really given me lots of time and saved me time, sorry. So this booklet we're going to share with you. It's a resource booklet that I use. But to get started, I just want to show you how we could make it a lot more engaging and create a platform for the students to work together. Collaboration is the key here, especially when it comes to the Learning Suite Online. So at the very least, to get started with the Learning Suite, I'm going to start by going to the plus option and then import from your device. And now, assuming that I've already saved the Word document as a PDF, all I would need to do is just open that PDF file. So automatically, all I've done is just created a PDF file on Learning Suite Online, and I'm able to share it with the students. I'll just wait for that to load. Now you can see on the top left-hand corner, and the reason why I've got both windows open at the moment, I'll just work with one. See on the top left-hand corner, there's a button there that says Finish Editing. Now I won't start any editing just yet. I will click on Finish Editing, and I'm going to show you what this looks like in real time if I was to share it with the students. Now, just going to start the activity rather than stay in edit mode. And I can see already that one person is connected. Now, assuming you've already gone on to hellosmart.com, and I'm just going to click on that little window, you'll see Miss Techie 46151. Hello, Nathan. I can see you there as my guest. And at this stage, at the very least, I can now interact with the students, whether it's driving the activity as an individual handout or a collaborative workspace, or simply just grab my pen on the smartboard, and when it comes to analysing an exam, I like the idea of looking at past exams and just thinking about, well, what type of glossary words are used in each of the exams in the past? Which ones are higher order thinking words? So we can just start writing straight onto the board, and you'll see that just by looking at that, at the very least, you will see that image start to appear, and I'll just go to my dual screen. So on the right-hand side, I'm logged in as a student. The left-hand side is as a teacher. Hopefully I don't confuse things. Bear with me, everyone. Okay. So, teacher. So you should be able to see, I'm just going to refresh that. Ooh. Okay, you should be able to see a workspace that's just been created. What I've done, and on the left-hand side, I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So very quickly, I've been able to create a collaborative workspace. So it's asking me how many teams I would like. So at this stage, I only do have 3 students connected, or 2 students. I'm just going to go everyone on the team. Then you should now see, remembering the right-hand side is you in on the activity as a student. And now, if you like, just by clicking on these 3 little dots, you can go in and you can start writing or adding text. So students in my class would be able to very quickly start to contribute to this file collectively as a group. So again, we can type in describe as a glossary keyword. If you want to have a go at adding anything there just to test it out, it would be good to see how this works on your end. Analyze, construct, okay, anyway, justify. And then very quickly we would start to gather information there, evaluate, fantastic. So I can even as a teacher go in and change that around, move it around. You can draw, so you can, I'm just going to experiment there, but you can do the same thing. It's a collaborative activity. Automatically, the class would be able to contribute to this activity fairly quickly. Okay, so I just want to be able to show you then the difference between being in edit mode when we're using the Smart Learning Suite online and being in live mode, which is what we're doing now. I'll just show you down the bottom left-hand side. Now, remembering this is me being a teacher, I'm in teacher mode. I can also set the pacing of the lesson from teacher to student. So teacher mode meaning that I'm driving this. Student mode will mean that then you as a student, you can see the little messages popped up, you can control and work at your own pace. So now on the right hand side, you should be able to see all of my slides. You can go through the workbook. Now, the rest of the workbook is very static, so we haven't done much aside from that very first workspace at the beginning of the workbook. Now, again, all of this will be saved because you've logged on and you've now viewing it as a user. If I turn it over to teacher mode, now you're seeing the same page as me. So I can then drive this. So the past exam review, this is simply a questionnaire, and I have students reflect. They go off, they choose a past exam, and they need to just answer each one of these questions. And the great thing about this, and I'll just move this aside for a second. Delete it. The great thing about this is that they get to really think about, well, what are there any significant patterns or perhaps any topics that have been really hit on, any similar questions in the last couple of years. Now, it's not to say that you're predicting questions, but it is a good exercise for them to really analyse the exam paper and get used to it. The earlier the better. So one thing that I like to do is create a questionnaire out of this very activity. And to do that, I need to be in edit mode. So I'm going to go back to home for a second, and you're going to get a message saying, just waiting for your teacher. Now, you wouldn't normally be doing it this way. You would normally be super organised and you would have your notebook all ready to go. Edit mode is where you do that. So I'm just going to go to the past exam review, and here I'm actually going to create or add an assessment. The reason why I'm using the assessment tool is because it's one way to create a questionnaire. And in that questionnaire, I could then copy and paste some of those questions. So I'm just going to go to one that I prepared earlier, and I'll go back a second. And I'll do the one that I did here. So back on the one that I did yesterday, if you have a look at some of the questions, I'm just going to go to edit, and you'll be able to revisit some of the questions. And these were just a copy and paste straight from that questionnaire. So past HSC paper, they need to firstly put the year that they're working on, and then what type of questions are in part A of the HSC paper. So that would be a multiple choice, but I don't tell them. I let them find out for themselves. The first half of these questions relate to which section of the syllabus, so that's a reflection exercise. It gets them to use the syllabus and start thinking about the different topics. So they're very relevant, and the idea is that once you run this, and I'll just run it for you so you can see. I'll get out of edit mode, and I will go into start so you can view it live. So I'm going to be flipping between live and edit mode because I feel like it's fairly important to see what's the links between the two. So if I click on review results and I'll reset that activity, you should be able to see the activity pop up on your window when I click on start. Hello, Renee. Also, my Okay, so you should be prompted with a past exam review. Complete the questionnaire for a past HSC paper of your choice. And we're just going to choose a paper, 2014, and then go next. Okay, very quickly, what types of questions are in part A of the HSC? Multiple choice. So really, really quickly, they're able to answer some questions, and feel free to have a go at this. It's good to see you giving it a go, Nathan. But any of the answers are fine. But as soon as I stop that, so if I was to end that activity, so over on my teacher live mode, I can say end and review, and very quickly I'm able to see what papers have been or are being analysed. So at the moment, 2014, I can have a look at. Okay, so 2 people have answered multiple choice. But the good thing is, the next question, okay, first half of these questions relate to which section of the syllabus. So automatically, I've had one person say core topics, the other one say B, multimedia systems. Now, although this isn't a marking exercise, and I think I've used multiple choice question here, even though they're red, it's probably not a bad thing, because then you can see the difference between the different type of paper or different type of topics. But the idea is that you could pull a trend very quickly, especially if you've got 10 or 15 students doing the very same questionnaire. And then, of course, we can export the results in Excel. So if I just save those and then open them really quickly, I can now also see a comparison and do an analysis in Excel. So something that I probably wouldn't be hitting as much with my class group, I can now see an analysis very quickly based on that questionnaire that we've done. And they can see it, and it's important for them to see the different types of trends that are taking place. So that was that was really examining past papers, and I'll just move on. Let me know if there's anything there, or if you want me to perhaps stop on something or revisit in the chat. So go back to home, and then I'll go into edit mode again, because I'd like to just show you then how I can keep it going. And I'll just go to edit. So normally, after we've had a look at some papers and past papers, and I've had the students familiarise themselves with the format of those examination papers, then we start getting into examination technique. So in this case, we're looking at responding to multiple choice questions. And as a teacher, I would go through this document. I'd explain to them what qualifiers are and how to identify them, and just give them some tips and tricks on how to approach multiple choice questions. Now, at the end of that, there's no reason why we can't add a few multiple choice questions to see whether we could use what we've learned, and especially the tricky type questions, and whether they, not only are we looking at whether they understand, or they're also doing some revision. So to do that, I'm going to start by going into the plus sign, clicking on assessment, and again, same way we created our questionnaire, we can add some multiple choice questions there. Now, the good thing about this is when you actually start to create this, you can reuse after. But the idea then would be go grab some, copy and paste some questions straight from a past paper, put them in there. Then they can have a go at answering them. And just like I showed you before, we can pull up an analysis very quickly. So the next thing I cover with them is, well, we've done multiple choice. We've had a go at answering some multiple choice questions using our response. Now we're going to look at, well, how do we plan a written response? One of the things that I like to do as a teacher would be, well, I'd like to identify, firstly, in a question, what are the glossary keywords by underlining them, then circle the syllabus content, then highlight any links or relationships. And that you can do very quickly in live mode. So if I was to view that in live mode, I can do that. We will view it. But one of the other things to do would be to perhaps add a shout it out. Now, I want them to start mind mapping and planning in their response. To do that, again, I'm going to go over to the little plus sign, click on activity. Now it's got a little lab icon or a little arcade icon, usually because the arcade indicates that it's an engaging type activity, so it's a gamification, that's where it comes from. So scroll down and you'll see an activity there called Shout It Out. Now Shout It Out is brilliant because very quickly we can create something that's going to involve students engaging and interacting together as a class. So I want them to plan a response and do it together as a group before we go off and do it individually. I'm going to determine how many contributions and ideas students can create by clicking the plus sign or the arrow, the up arrow, and whether or not we want to show or hide students. Now, normally I hide students. Being high school, sometimes they get a bit silly. I think you need a bit of teething time for this. But anyway, we're going to try hiding and then click finish. Now, I'm going to view this again in start mode. And you'll be able to see it. Going to flip, and because I've just started it, it's automatically set to teacher mode. You can see that if I start that for the class, wait for it to load, you should be able to see it. We can start to very quickly brainstorm some ideas. So I'll just okay, so one of the questions was let's jump to describe how information technology could be used in the proposed system. So anything that comes to mind, describe is to provide features or characteristics. So I would say to the class, well, what comes to mind? What are some key elements there that we need to consider when we're actually responding to this question? So there we go. That's just my contribution. But then each student would have to have a go at just brainstorming, well, how can I connect? What type of things should I include in this type of response? So describe how information technology, I would say to them, give me some examples of information technology that could be used. Now, this is very subject specific. I'm a computing teacher, so obviously this would be specific to your key learning area, but that's one way that I would go about to create very quickly plan a response to a HSC style question. And I think this needs to be, I usually do it very early on and in preliminary even, because they need to be able to get used to seeing these questions. So as a teacher, I can then either reset this activity or even if I go to select game element, I can add things like a timer. So I said, all right, well, let's add a timer here. And I want you to, you've got 1 minute to complete this task before I turn it off, which is brilliant. So you can add game elements, remembering that this was a lab style activities, and the whole purpose is to engage and make sure that everybody is contributing. So it happens really easy. I'm just going to pause that. Again, you can display names if you want to. So if I go into the settings, and also then if I pause the activity, perhaps I've realized that I need more contributions, so I can add more contributions there. And then run or resume the activity. I'll just end that. So as I said before, like to be able to plan a response, again, now students, I could do this together as a group. I could say to them, all right, well, I want you to have a go at doing this. I can set it as an individual handout in edit mode, or I can do it as a collaborative task. All right, I'll just move on. Okay. So now I'm going to ask them to have a go at doing it. We do it together. Now, this is something that I definitely want to create a collaborative task for. I would need to go back into edit mode. Now, again, please, I'm not going to apologize for keep flipping back and forth, because I do want to show you how each of these elements work. But normally, you would be doing this pre-hand. So I'm just going to go edit. And we've done that. I'm going to jump straight to let's do one together. Now, to do this, we're going to just click on Convert to Activity. And you'll notice, make this a collaborative workspace activity. And then we can preview that as a teacher. I can then preview and say, okay, that's what it's going to look like. And then students will be able to work on this together. Or, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to convert it as an individual handout, which still means they are working on it, but they're not going to be seeing each other's comments. They're going to work on it on their own individually. So I'll leave it at that. Moving on. So now this is the tricky, we move on to extended response questions. And this is something that, again, fairly similar to planning a response for short answers. But obviously we're going to have to develop a scaffold process to help them and assist them, particularly when they're planning their extended responses. So I would go through this with them, and I'll identify or highlight key areas. Then it's time to get them to have a go at it. So with this, I would set it again as an individual handout where they would go off and complete it themselves. So they have to answer some questions, things like having a look at or making links directly to the syllabus area for that particular question. It's important that they have an individual, and the great thing about providing an individual handout activity is that I can also provide feedback in real time. And I'm just going to show you again. I'll quickly set them as an individual handout. And finish editing. So we're going to jump straight onto extended response. And I'm just going to set it to student mode. So if I start the extended response activity, it's an individual handout. I can work on it in my own pace. I'll just full screen that so you can see it. Should be loading. There it is, start handout. So what you can see at the moment is a student view. Hopefully yours is running a bit quicker than mine at the moment. Just going to start the next one and see whether that works. Okay. This page is a collaborative activity. Okay, that explains why. So I set it over to student when it was actually in fact a collaborative activity, and I will just start that off again. I jumped ahead. See if we can get back on track. Okay, we can start. Okay, we're loading it up. So basically you can go in, or a student will be able to go in again and start to do things, but the immediate feedback. So I should be able to also have a look at student progress and then see what the students are doing and where they're up to, and then also provide feedback straight up. So at the moment, I can see that one student is started. It's actually me because I'm doing it as well. If I click on that, then I could also say, hey, hurry up and get some work done. So the idea is that you're able to give that feedback and mark as they're also completing the task, and everything's being saved as well. So moving on, I think the biggest learning experience that I could give my students is have them thinking like a HSC marker. So having done HSC marking myself, I think one of the biggest learning curves for me as far as the content, knowledge base, and the way that I deliver HSC courses is to understand, well, how does the marking process work? And this is something that I teach them explicitly. So one of the things that I do with them is then start with having a look at some marking criteria next to a question. So we have a look at, for instance, question 21 and the marking guidelines for this. Then we start to really think about, and let's brainstorm this together, how would we approach this question? Now, again, I could create this, make it a collaborative workspace, just like I did before. To do that, I would need to go back to home and then go into edit mode and start that process. In fact, I'll do that because the next scenes are when we actually start looking at samples. So I'm going to do now, going back into edit mode. Now hopefully by the end of this you'll be used to seeing start mode and edit mode. Start mode is your live mode and edit mode is where you're actually adding and really designing your, redesigning your static document. So I'm just going to go straight down to my samples. So typically I would create a collaborative workspace activity, and the idea here would be for the class to have a go and think about, well, what are the outcomes that are being addressed? What is the explicit question? What's it asking? What are some of the things that we need to consider? What are the better responses going to include? Then we do that using our sample questions. The sample questions, simply click on them, convert to individual handouts. I'm going to do that again. So the idea there would be, well, we'll have a look at that and see whether we could, firstly, as a marker myself, perhaps maybe tick some areas where I feel like, oh, this person's answered something. Usually in HSC style marking, we would do that on the side anyway, but it would be a way to identify and actually get the students to read the responses and highlight anything that they see is worth a point or a remark. And of course, get them to then understand a holistic approach of marking, because it's not just seeing key points, but it's also looking at what the criteria is asking. And then after we go through that, they need to then have a go at creating, reflecting upon a sample themselves. So they would choose a sample and then really highlight together as a group what elements of the sample have been addressed. And I'll convert that into a collaborative activity so that we can see the finished. Then individually, we would do it for homework. So I'm just going to set that as an individual handout. Now the great thing about this, assuming I've finished it, I'm just going to convert the, so I'm just going to go to finish editing. Let's see what our final product looks like. So the booklet that we originally had was, again, a static booklet. We've gone in and we've created some collaborative workspaces. And now this is probably one of the main elements. If people ask me, what do you think the main features that that notebook and the Smart Learning Smart Learning Online Suite has, I think there are three key factors that I keep hitting every time. One of them is engagement, and that's using the lab style activities, the little arcade icon we used before. The other one is assessment, the ability to assess in real time. I love that. It gives me the opportunity to gauge where my students are at. And the third element is collaboration, and by far this tool, the online learning suite, does that. And it enables that, and it can happen almost instantly. You don't even have to go into edit mode to do that, like I've shown you. So I would go through this, some of it with my students. Remembering at the moment I've set it to teacher pace, which is teacher led. If I wanted them to do this at home, then I would click on student. Now, as soon as I do that, I could also set whether I want the ability to change it and as an individual handout or a collaborative workspace activity. So that option is also there for you to do. But then just driving through it, and teaching my students exactly what I want them to learn, then giving them the opportunity to either learn together as a group or have a go at doing it themselves is probably one of the biggest benefits. Now I'm just going to jump straight to my marking criteria section, which I probably just missed. Hopefully that's good. Okay, that's loading. Just so that we can finish up, because I do understand that we're running out of time. The very last thing I did want to show you, thanks Nathan, is that once you go to home, you've got this awesome workbook. And this workbook now has become an interactive workbook, one that requires students to be able to actually engage with. It's not a paper document that's just thrown somewhere. If you just click on these three little dots and go share link, then you can actually share this link with your students. You get a student access link. What that then means is that your students will be able to, or you'll be able to share that link, copy it, and I'm just going to bring it across to my window over here. And then they could then work on their workbook for homework, and I think that's another awesome benefit. And while they're working on it for homework, all of that information that they're doing, all of the individual handouts that they've done, any sort of collaborative activities that have been done together as a class has been saved in this workbook. So they can then go off and do it for homework, and then you would also be able to go in and view it, then mark it. So I think I'll end it there. Hopefully I have given you some insight on how I would use this in the HSC context. Feel free to ask any questions. I will just so please, if you have any questions, put it down below and I'll just bring that up. I'll give you a minute to ask questions.
Thank you very much for that, Eva. Sorry about that, guys. We just had some sound issues here. So if nobody had any questions, we can go back to the slides. We've just got a few reminders we can go through. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 more webinars left for this term. So you can register for those. They're just up on the screen there. And also, we also have the Inspire Greatness. We also have the Inspire Greatness Conference coming up, so we'll just get to that one. So you'll have a link emailed to you if you'd like to register for the conference. That link will come in the form of a follow-up email for this webinar. The follow-up email will also have a recording of this webinar if you would like to go back and refer to anything that Eva discussed. And also, if you'd like to earn your certificate, I did mention at the start that you could do that through YouTube, which you can in fact locate this webinar through YouTube. It will be uploaded in the next week to our Ed2Ed YouTube channel, which you'll also get a link to that in the follow-up email tomorrow that gets sent from GoToWebinar. And you can also access this webinar recording through the training.smarttech.com if you've got a login for that as well. And if you just click the Mark Complete button at the end, you will earn a certificate. So I think we've definitely gone over time. So that's it for tonight. We'll let everybody get back to enjoying their afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining. See you later.